This is Undaunted.Life, a man's podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Thompson. Let's get into it. Welcome back to the Forging Tale. Sorry, I got to mess up my own intro here because Zach, I think this is your 8th attempt in a row, but the timer is going. You're the man. You are the man. Landon, leave it in, baby. This is a monumental occurrence, but let's get back into it. Welcome back to the Forging Table. The mission of Undaunted.Life is equipping men to push back darkness with content that forges spiritual, mental, and physical resilience. At the Forging Table, you'll see a group of regular guys forging spiritual resilience by digging into God's Word, and we're welcoming all of you to come along on that journey with us. That's OG Ryan. Then we also got OG Zach in the house, and we got Russell in the house, guys. We're digging into Genesis 37 today. So we have covered a lot of ground over the last several weeks, but now we're going to get into Joseph's dream. So we're going to be spending a lot of time focused on Joseph here. So, Ryan, you did such a good job last week reading all of the most obscure names in the history of the Old Testament.
I wore my Sorry Joby shirt just because I had a feeling you were going to make me read that.
No, I would never set someone up to fail. No, like not at all.
So I didn't have to apologize to Joby.
No, it was just one big sorry. Yeah, we haven't busted that shirt out in a while. We should have that. Hey, walk through his church wearing that shirt, and people think it is absolutely hilarious. They don't get the joke. Well, some of them get the joke, but some of them are just like, what's the Sorry Joby thing? They're like, where'd you get that shirt? And I was like, there's like 6 of those in existence. And I think we sent one to his wife as well. All right, just do the first 4 verses of Genesis.
Just the first 4?
First 4, let's go.
All right. Jacob lived in the land of his father's sojournings in the land of Canaan. These are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was pasturing the flock with his brothers. He was a boy with the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, his father's wives, and Joseph brought a bad report of them to their father. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any other of his sons, because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a robe of many colors. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all of his brothers, they hated him, and they could not speak peacefully to him.
Russell, do you want to act out robe of many colors, coats of many colors? Do you remember what you did? Remember what you did? No, you jazz hands all right. It was nice.
Many colors.
Yeah, I'm gonna remember that every single time. Well, yeah, let's go ahead and kick it off right here. Some people are, they make a lot of the robe of many colors. Obviously, there's been a lot to discuss there. Why Joseph was kind of the preferred son. Joseph kind of, some people read it like, hey, he was giving a bad report to the father because he knew he was the favorite. He kind of was like a tattletale, and so it's like kind of setting him up for failure. Whereas other people are like, no, he was just incredibly righteous man, and if people are not upholding righteousness, you let your father know. Like in that day, it's like it would have been incumbent upon him to share. So whatever y'all want to hit on those first 4 verses.
If we go back 2 weeks ago, Russell, you talked about how Jacob kind of set up his line towards Esau, and how he showed favoritism. I think that favoritism is coming out more and more now that you talked about, and then the brothers are actually seeing it, and they're becoming really vengeful of it and taking it out on Joseph. But I don't know if Joseph is I think you're the one that brought it up, or Russell brought it up, that there's like no bad thing said about Joseph in like the 14 chapters that he's in. But something makes me wonder if Joseph had any humility, or he was just a matter of fact. You know what I'm saying? And so like that's the thing. You don't know if these brothers just automatically hate him, which God uses that hate for his good, because he has to set up something in regards to what's going to happen in time. But like you start to see that favoritism come out, and you start seeing these brothers getting more upset, but then we'll get into the dreams. But yeah, that's just kind of like what I took from that first part.
Yep. Have y'all, so I just want to bring this up here at the beginning of this so that we can watch it as we go through it. But there's so much commentary on the idea that Joseph, being a comparable of a Christ figure in, I don't know how you phrase it, but there's so many contrast and so many things that are similar. I even saw that one person said that even the coat of many colors, there was some discrepancy on translators, and that same translation could be a coat of no seams, that basically like a no seam robe. And that was actually the same description, or a description that was given to Christ when they robed him, was a robe with no seams. And so just these little things I kind of want to look for as we go through the Joseph story to relate those back. And some of them will just jump out at us.
Well, and Ryan, I think you've talked about before how you were really excited to get towards the latter end of Genesis because you really like Joseph so much. Yeah. But, I mean, my gosh, like, sometimes I'll be embarrassed at myself at how much I lament or complain, or, circumstances don't go well. I remember, Louis C.K., kind of a, rough comedian, but back in the day, he had this joke to where people would get mad on flights when their Wi-Fi wouldn't work. He's like, it's sending a signal to space and sending it back down to your phone. Can you give it a second? And it's just kind of like how many people they don't even realize it's like he's like, you're flying.
Yeah, you're doing 500 miles per hour.
In the air. Like you're doing in a few hours what would take, your forefathers months of travel, and half the people died of dysentery to do something. And you just read through Joseph's story, and it's like, oh my gosh, things are so easy for us. And this dude just stayed the course, and he kept experiencing injustice after injustice.
My favorite part of the Joseph story is I think what Joseph says to his brothers at the end, and I know I'm probably giving away some stuff, but you guys should already read this. But
spoiler alert: what
you meant for evil, God meant for good.
Yeah,
and that's
he might be the ultimate example of that, other than Jesus.
Yeah, and so what we meant for evil, which is our sin, God meant for good by sending his son. And then, when it comes to Joseph is set up to keep the Israelites going because, this nasty famine's going to come and hit. And so God had him go through all of this just to set him up. And he, I'm sure there's times that he lamented, what he was going through, but he always trusted God and what God had for him. And so Joseph's probably one of my favorite characters in the Bible. It's just he went through such a horrible time, but man, just came out at the end just praising God.
Yeah, incredible stuff. Let's go and keep the story rolling. Zach, if you'll hit 5 through 11.
Now Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. He said to them, "Hear this dream that I have dreamed. Behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and behold, my sheaf arose and stood upright, and behold, your sheaves gathered around it and bowed down to my sheaf." His brothers said to him, "Are you indeed to reign over us, or are you indeed to rule over us?" So that they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. Then he dreamed another dream and told it to his brothers and said, "Behold, I have dreamed another dream. Behold, the sun, the moon, and 11 stars were bowing down to me." But when he told it to his father and to his brothers, his father rebuked him and said to him, "What is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall I and your mother and your brothers indeed come to bow ourselves to the ground before you?" And his brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the saying in mind.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different ways people can take this. First of all, bold move, Cotton. They were so mad at your first dream. You're like, hey, I got another one for you, and it's even better for me. But it's just kind of like, okay, it depends on what tonality you read into the text is going to be how you're going to take the meaning of this section. And so if you take it as him being kind of smarmy, I had a dream, you want to hear it? Yeah, y'all were all bowing down to me. I was above all you. So if you read that into the text, that'll be how it comes off. Or this guy just literally can't not say his dreams, or this was part of the mission, so it doesn't really matter if there was smarm or not coming off of him as he was saying it. And I couldn't really get a consensus on commentators as to, okay, he was in an unprovoked manner sharing his dreams. And it doesn't sound like he was saying it to be like, hey, can y'all help me understand this dream? It was like, hey, bros, gather around. Yeah, hey, you know how I'm on the favorite? Hey, you like my coat? By the way, y'all are all going to bow down. And then it's like, hey, double down, mom and dad. Also, y'all are going to be bound down as well. So, again, it's kind of all over the place in the commentaries.
I don't know that it's a normal dream, like the ones that we have that I can never remember when I wake up. I have a feeling this was like a tripping acid, cannot forget about it, feels very real type dream. So it's almost like he feels compelled to say something, which would explain some of the behavior about, hitting him with the second one. That's even more.
How many times could he have had the dream? Maybe he's had it multiple times. And we just don't know that, because if you see a lot with Pharaoh in the end, he's having this dream multiple times, and so I like to think. I mean, this is just me thinking about it, but what do they do in the evenings? Don't they all get around and talk to each other and share things? And maybe he was genuinely saying, "I'm having these dreams, and these are this is what it's showing me. Like, what does this mean? And the brothers probably are already jealous of him, but like his father, who loves him, is like, come on, man, your dreams are kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Like, your mom and I are going to bow down to you. Like, that's nuts. And like his brothers are like, who does this guy think he is? He thinks our own father is going to bow down to him. But I honestly think he's just naive.
Yeah, I almost see, like, later on, we even see in his other interactions with people, I believe with Potiphar's wife, like, it's this very, like, he's not trying to be as confrontational as he comes off at times, but he is just so black and white on what is good, what is bad. No, I'm not going to do this. I know no one's around, but my God is around. I can't sin in front of my God. Like, he has this idea that God is with him, God is watching over, and that whatever needs to happen, he just bluntly puts it out there. It's almost like he's on the spectrum or something. You know, like he's one of those guys. I don't know if y'all have ever met them, but one of those guys that they don't filter what normal people filter out to try to make you feel good about the stuff. They're just very matter of fact, and this is what it is. I need to tell you this. And we also know that he's gifted in dreams. You know, later on we see this being a continual thing, that he's gifted in dreams. He's gifted in understanding dreams or knowing that they should at least be interpreted. And so here we see the start of that. And I think he's just a very unique character that the Bible is first introducing to us here as this guy is different. And he knows he's different. His family knows he's different. Even the people that don't like it, they still have to admit he's different.
When you said he was kind of spectrum-y, I literally had the thought that they're all hanging around the campfire. They're talking about how the day went. They're cracking jokes and all that. And then he just real serious goes, I had another dream. And he just starts like describing the dream, and everyone's just kind of like, Joseph, again?
Yeah.
We were having fun.
Read the
We're
room,
having
man.
a good time.
Read the
Like,
room.
bro, like that's not the time for this. That actually is like way better. I think I'm going to go with that. Like maybe that was the interpretation, but that literally could be it.
Like the dreams that you hear about today. Like as I listen or think through all the stories in the Bible, when they point out dreams, they're always pretty impactful, memorable. What about the ones that are happening in the Middle East right now?
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
They feel more real than real to those people.
it's not a normal dream, right? So it just seems like this is something that's very impactful, that's not going to go away, but made such an impression that he feels convicted that he needs to share it.
Well, and gosh, I mean, Ryan, you want to talk about one of the best arguments for something like Calvinism, the ultimate sovereignty of God, of all that. It's like, okay, people in countries where a missionary cannot get into without all kinds of hoops that have to be jumped through, where Bibles cannot be sold or distributed, where street preaching would end with the cutting off of your head in seconds type of situation. And yet the gospel is exploding in these areas because Jesus, as with Nabil Qureshi, is coming to these people and calling to them in their dreams. And you're right. You know, regardless of if you take any sleep aids or anything like that, because sometimes, you know, people make the comment like magnesium dreams or something like that, because if you take magnesium right before bed, like sometimes the dreams can be so visceral and real, but within 30 minutes of waking up, you have nothing. You have no recollection of it whatsoever. However, I think all of us have had dreams before that it is completely stuck in your brain, and it was more real than real while you were experiencing it. A couple months ago on, it will be now with Ask a Pastor, I asked Joby a question at the end. I saved the last question to kind of be kind of a weird deal. But I said, hey, you're 51 years old. Let's say you wake up tomorrow and the last 30 years of your life was a dream. So you're 21 years old. You wake up, you're back in your dorm room or whatever you're doing when you're 21. So you have not graduated college yet. You have not gone to seminary. You've not met your wife, Gretchen. So that's no eldest son, JP, no youngest daughter, Reagan Capri, no beach church, no church of 1122, like no nothing. So you're back and you wake up and it's, what's the first thing you're going to do? Like, there are dreams where it would be like, no, you're there the entire time. You were experiencing it the entire time, and all of a sudden just poof, it's gone. So yeah, this does feel like categorically different. Like, this is not like, oh, I had a weird dream or I had a bad dream, or because a lot of times in your dream, it's not actual people. It's just amalgamations of men and women or children or whatever that are just in your dream that are part of whatever the narrative of your dream is. And again, I don't really like getting into too much like dream, like, you know, these books of people that are like, okay, if you have a dragon in your dream, it means this. And if the color yellow shows up, then it means that. Like, but yeah, I mean, we see throughout this, and this is used throughout the Old Testament, that these dreams and visions are absolutely pertinent to the overall narrative of Scripture.
Has Joby experienced a peanut butter and jelly sandwich yet?
You know what? He is not. And I told, that's a good reminder because he's never eaten. Because I asked a question. I was like, okay, one of these has got to go forever. So you can only have one or the other for forever. I said PB&J or grilled cheese. And Joby goes, well, I've never had a peanut butter and jelly. And so he said, I'll just get rid of that. And I literally was like, pause, hold up, wait a minute. What do you mean you've never had a peanut butter and jelly? What do you mean? What does that even mean? How does that even happen? And he's just like, oh no, man, I've never really had me a peanut butter and jelly. That's kind of how he sounds in my head, at least when he talks.
That's not how he sounds like that. Hey man, I never had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
Man, I ain't never had me no peanut butter and jelly, man. I don't really know.
Peanut butter and jelly for little babies, man.
He's kind of like Ricky Bobby and Roy D. Mercer in my head. They just like a combination of those two guys.
Come
like,
on, man.
How big a boy are you?
Yeah. I never had no peanut butter and jelly.
Yeah, I should probably figure that out. You know what I should do? Before I don't really know if I should do it. Okay, I got an idea.
Yeah.
So as soon as I'm done, we won't let anyone know about it. I think I got an idea. So remind me after we're done here. Anything else in this first section before we move on? All right, Joseph being sold to his brothers now. Spoiler alert. Whoops. All right, we're going to do...
sold to his brothers or by his brothers?
By his brothers, sorry. Words are important. So Russell, let's go ahead and hit verses 12 through 24.
All right. Now his brothers had gone to graze their father's flocks near Shechem, and Israel said to Joseph, as you know, your brothers are grazing the flocks near Shechem. Come, I am going to send you to them. Very well, he replied. So he said to him, go and see if all is well with your brothers and with the flocks, and bring word back to me. Then he sent him off of the valley of Hebron. When Joseph arrived at Shechem, a man found him wandering around in the fields and asked him, what are you looking for? He replied, I'm looking for my brothers. Can you tell me where they are grazing their flocks? They have moved on from here. The man answered, I heard them say, let's go to Dothan. So Joseph went after his brothers and found them at Dothan. But they saw him in the distance, and before he reached them, they plotted to kill him. You say through...
24. Through 24.
All right. Here comes that dreamer, they said to each other. Come now, let's kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns and say that a fierce animal devoured him. Then we'll see what comes of his dreams. When Reuben heard this, he tried to rescue him from their hands. Let's not take his life, he said. Don't shed any blood. Throw him into the cistern here in the wilderness. But don't lay a hand on him. Reuben said this to rescue him from them and take him back to his father. So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the ornate robe that he was wearing, and they took him and threw him into the cistern. The cistern was empty and there was no water in it. Through 24?
Yeah, just through 24.
Okay.
Yeah, you're good.
That's it.
All right, so let's go ahead and get into this here because obviously we see some scheming that's coming through. And it's one thing whenever you have incredibly strong negative feelings towards a person, and then now we start seeing this conspiracy. And again, when they're talking about here comes this dreamer that is obviously dripping with sarcasm. So again, we have to look at context and see it's exactly what's going on here in the text. Reuben saying, hey, let's not take his life. Like, let's actually kind of, let's see what we can do to profit from this. But yeah, I mean, they stripped him, they threw him in a pit. And again, you have to think, we know the ending of the story, but if you're Joseph, he had to have known that his brothers were not huge fans of his. He had to have known, like, usually people are not completely aloof or unaware that people don't know him unless he maybe was a little spectrum-y. Perhaps he was aloof to it. But I mean, you want to talk about the ultimate betrayal. I mean, these are your brothers. We spent some time, I don't know, a week or two ago talking about brothers and the relationship between brothers and that bond that's there. And even if you fight and even if you get after it, like ultimately you are for your brother. But I mean, this goes back to Cain and Abel. And we obviously see this same type of thing working out with jealousy turning into a murderous, violent rage by Joseph's brothers. Yeah. So keep going on that.
No, I mean when it comes down to it, I mean they're just mad, they're angry, and then what we see with Reuben is Reuben actually shows some compassion towards him. From what I read in Moody, they don't know if it was really just compassion towards him or just respect out of his father, respect for his father, because we talked about within the last chapter, of the ancestral relationship he had with his mother-in-law, which probably led to his father being really upset with him, but. I mean, you think about it, man, like I've never wanted I've been angry at my brothers, but I've never wanted to kill them, And so like the fact that these guys are so jealous of who Joseph is that they want to take his life is kind of sad. It's kind of sad that these are the guys, but it just kind of shows how broken we all are. It doesn't matter. Reuben from here is showing some compassion and says, hey, just throw him in the well. Let's not spill his blood. But then, they're still trying to figure out after he's in the well whether they want to kill him or not and what they're going to go and do with him next. So it's just, I don't know. It's just, it's a tough thing to look at.
I think Reuben doesn't really show, or he does show, that this family still doesn't have the leadership that you would think it would, that Jacob really hasn't set up the structure. Because even when Reuben doesn't want to do this, being the oldest son, so he's the oldest son, he should have a great amount of authority over his other brothers. But because of all the family dynamics, there is chaos. Even when he doesn't want to do this, he has to basically talk them into this other idea, throw him in the cistern. He can't just go up to them and say, this is wrong. You're not going to do it. I'm the eldest. You fall in line. And even though we're tired of this little punk, we're not going to do this. He has to work this thing out to where he tries to scheme. Again, he's his father's son.
Yep.
And it doesn't work out.
Well, I think also, too, is that you have to look at the fact that Jacob didn't respect him as the firstborn. He lost the blessing because of what he did. Right. So the brothers more than likely don't respect him. But then he decides to go and do it on his own. Like, he doesn't do what you said he should have done, which is step up and say no. He's like, throw him in the cistern, and he's going to go grab a rope and act like he saved him. This is kind of where you see Judah actually take a step as a leader in this group. And we'll see that in the coming chapter about, he basically says, hey, let's do this. And we don't know if he's saying do this out of his own greed or if he's trying to help Joseph out or not, rather than spill a brother's blood. But yeah, it's you kind of see who starts taking lead. And then we see that the story shifts towards Judah's narrative for a little bit, for a while.
Yeah, I mean, there's questions about why would the father send the son in these conditions, knowing that the other ones don't like him and all that. But I guess part of it just be providence, in order for this story to unfold with what's about to occur. A lot of these things maybe are just God's providence to try to answer some of the questions.
Right. When you have to see, coming up here with the end, sometimes you'll have parents or things that happen and people will be like, how did no one know? Like if there's a violent outburst by somebody or someone goes into a rage or something happens, it's like, how did no one see the signs? Like, how could a parent possibly have let this person go with this group of kids knowing what blah, blah, blah. And it's like, it's one of those hindsight is 20/20 situations. It's also one of those things where it's like, okay, you were not in the mind of that person. That person was distracted. Perhaps they thought, hey, boys will be boys. Yeah, of course they hate their brother. Oh my gosh, I would kill him if I had the chance. Like things that are said that I'm assuming are, something that is time in memoriam. Like people constantly talk that way about people like, oh, I just want to kill that guy. And they don't actually mean it. They're just using hyperbolic language. But again, we're going to get to the text here. Like he's going to lose his son for a long period of time. And, there's been stories. I heard about one story recently. I don't want to give too much detail because I don't want to mess it up. But there was a kid that was kidnapped from a particular house or whatever. And I guess everyone still stayed living on the street or whatever. And like 22 years later at like 3:30 in the morning, the person came back to their family's door and like rang the doorbell. Like 20-something years later, they had been abducted. They had gotten back and they basically just walked home, right? Because they were abducted at such an early age. They didn't know like, oh, I got to call the police. I got to do this. I got to fix this and that type of thing. And it's just like, okay, like what do you even do in a situation like that? It's just like, it's a different level, like for these parents, because they thought their kid was completely gone and now their kid's at their door, but they don't recognize them because they haven't seen him for a considerable period of time. And so it's not going to be without its, tremendous wide-ranging consequences. So let's actually, since we're kind of falling into that discussion here, Ryan, if you would like to go ahead and finish this out. So let's just do 25 and read through the end of Genesis.
Can I just bring up one thing?
Please, go.
Is that back to the Jesus archetype is that they mocked him for his robe and tore it off of him, just to keep an eye on those kind of little things, because obviously the same thing happened with Jesus. Go ahead. And
there's also one interesting thing real quick in verse 23. They stripped him of his robe, the robe of many colors that he wore. Like, they didn't just say they stripped him of his robe. They kind of like, no, double stamp. Remember when we said it was a robe of many colors? Right. Like, it's like they're reminding the reader, or they're reminding the person, like, hey, this wasn't just a robe. Remember, like, just not that long ago, we were talking about what the robe was.
Well, they stripped him of his robe, but then they also threw him in the pit. And like, after Jesus dies, where does he go? What do they call hell? The pit. Yeah. And the pit's empty. The tomb is going to be empty. So, I mean, there's a lot of good, Jesus archetype in here is, I think, the word you used. So there's a lot of good contrast. You want to go ahead and get started?
Yeah, 25 through the end.
Then they sat down to eat. And looking up, they saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead with their camels, bearing gum, balm, and myrrh, on their way to carry it down to Egypt. Then Judah said to his brothers, "What profit is it if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother, our own flesh." And his brothers listened to him. The Midianite traders passed by, and they drew Joseph up and lifted him out of the pit, and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. They took Joseph to Egypt. When Reuben returned to the pit, he saw Joseph was not in the pit, and he tore his clothes, and returned to his brothers and said, "The boy is gone, and where shall I go?" Then they took Joseph's robe and slaughtered a goat and dipped the robe in blood. And then they sent the robe of many colors and brought it to their father and said, This we have found. Please identify whether it is your son's robe or not." And they identified it and said, "It is my son's robe." And he identified it and said, "This is my son's robe. A fierce animal has devoured him. Joseph is without a doubt torn to pieces." Then Jacob tore his garments and put sackcloth on his loins and mourned for his son many days. All his sons and all his daughters rose up to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted and said, "No, I shall go down to Sheol to my son mourning." Thus his father wept for him. Meanwhile, the Midianites sold him in Egypt to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard.
So obviously Potiphar is going to very much so, feature in the life of Joseph here shortly. But we have Judah saying, "Hey, come let us sell him." And gosh, I wrote right there in the mouth, just very Judas-like.
Yeah.
That the same kind of idea. And so I forget, it was a couple weeks back now, Zach, it may have been, 3 weeks ago, but we were talking about at what point, because I was making the point about pray, guess, go, and it's at what point do you lean on your own instincts, whether that be leadership or management or business or entrepreneurial instincts to do a thing? Because if you're looking at the story of the Gospels from a very pragmatic point of view or a business point of view, Judas was right. Hey, let's make some money doing this. Oh my gosh, she just broke this, and that was a year's wages in that jar. We could have sold that and fed the poor, and we could have done all these different things, obviously missing the point of what was even being done in the moment. But I don't know if this is just, Zach or Ryan, you already brought this up, to where it's just okay, we can only surmise what Judah's motivation is here. Is he just thinking practically? Is he thinking pragmatically? Is he already thinking about guilt? It's well, if we're going to lose our brother, we might as well get some coin out of this entire thing. So it's just hard to kind of know what the motivation was there for Judah.
The heart is desperately wicked. Who knows it? That's what comes to mind for me. Yeah.
Right.
Because they sold him 20 shekels. That's roughly the cost of a slave at this time in history. And so, again, I don't really as long as we tell everyone this is what we're doing, I'm okay with hey, what do you think this means? Because that doesn't really level in. You should not ask yourself that much, hey, what does this scripture mean to me? That's not really something, because you're basically starting in the land of eisegesis. That becomes a bit problematic. But here, I feel like Judah is just thinking pragmatically. He's hey, what are we profiting here? Yeah, we're getting rid of this nuisance, but we might as well get something extra. The bonus is the money, because we're already going to be getting rid of him, so who cares?
And I agree with that. I think it was money motivated, but I also think if we think back, how much do they know about their history? How much do they know about Cain and Abel? And do you really want to spill your own brother's blood, who's considered innocent? And so I think when it gave him a way out. It gave him a way to take leadership, and they're hey, we can split up that money, and we don't have to live with the guilt of our brother, of killing our brother. But their father, they're going to have to live with their father, who's going to mourn for many years until he sees his son. And he doesn't even know he's ever going to see his son again. They don't know they're ever going to see their brother again, and they have to live with that. And so I just think that's just something, they didn't even think about at that point. They're just thinking about how do we, I think they're thinking, man, we pull him out of this pit, he's going to go home and tell our father, and we're going to get, in trouble again. So.
Well, and psychologically speaking, I think we're wired to justify the decisions that we make, to rationalize them. that's a legitimate thing. So I'm sure, they say that the path to hell is paved with good intentions. Mm-hmm. And so they had just done something, and now they're working to make themselves feel better about it.
Have y'all ever found yourself to where, to me, this is one of those stories where they kind of thought something? What is it? Mel Gibson actually said it the other day. It's your second thought and your first action. And the idea that you have your first thought, And then most of the time we're pretty good about controlling that thought and
Yeah.
submitting it to the Spirit, or, and controlling that. But then like that second thought, you're accountable for that one. Like if you continue on that path, that second thought is yours and you're accountable to it. And then that action that you take, you need to watch those, because that's where, and I feel like with them, somebody had that first thought, here's our brother, let's kill him and let's see what happens about those dreams. And it's kind of like, no, let's really do it. So that second thought got a hold of them to where somebody said something they shouldn't have said. They thought it first, they shouldn't have said it. They took action on it. And then they find themselves continuing to take action towards a wrong thing because they don't know how to get themselves out. At the point that they threw him in the cistern, they were kind of in a pickle, because what do they do then? They try to pull him out and then tell their dad they were just joking. Yeah. I mean, the cisterns were not like something that you joked about being at the bottom of, because he could have died just from whatever that was, if it had water and whatever. And so like the idea that they just keep on making that next bad decision, thinking that that's going to somehow dig themselves out. And it never does.
It's like what Kyle said earlier, where it's like, sometimes people say what they don't mean, like, oh man, I could kill that guy. Doesn't mean you want to go and kill that guy. So one of the brothers let off some steam, like, oh man, we should just kill Joseph. And rather than like Reuben being like, come on, man, that's crazy. He's our brother. Like you were saying, he goes, no, let's throw him in the pit. It was just like, so one like stupid thought led to another stupid idea, and they actually did it. Now they're trying to figure out how to get out of this.
And none of them thought back to be like, hey, do you remember that story that our dad told us about Abraham when he made a covenant with God, and then God said this weird thing about your people will be strangers in a land not their own and slaves for 400 years? Like, do you think maybe this is how like we're going to sell our brother off to these people and we know he's going to be out in this other land or whatever? But
I remember watching a documentary. I mean, if you watch any modern true crime stuff, there's the diabolical people that plan out every single aspect of the horrible abduction, rape, murder that they're going to be doing. When you hear these serial killer things, like I'm kind of weirdo. I'm kind of like into the stories, just like, because again, if I'm equipping men to push back darkness, I kind of wade in some of those dark pools of water to where it's like, all right, that's pretty darn dark. But I remember this one story because it was actually a redemptive story, because the guy was on death row. He ended up becoming a Christian. He was like teaching theology classes and Bible classes inside the prison and all that. And I think he was eventually executed. But he abducted a woman from like a gas station, and he raped her. And I guess the plan was to rape her. The plan never was to kill her, but apparently things, escalated during the situation, and he's progressively making these ideas. Well, it's like, well, now what if she talks? Okay, well, I got to shut her up. Okay, well, I went a little bit too far with the violence. Okay, and then he ends up killing this woman, and then he calls his buddy and picks him up in the car, and he's got a dead person in the back of the car, and so now he's brought his buddy into it. And his buddy's a little bit more of a low IQ guy, kind of a go along to get along guy, would basically, do anything to help a guy. And now all of a sudden they're trying to find a place to get rid of this body. And it's just the continual escalation of the sin, to where it started with, I want to slake this lust, this sexual lust I have. And then he sees someone that he could potentially do that with, but he doesn't want to mess with the whole courtship process, right? Thinking in the way a rapist would think. And then it just completely unravels layer by layer by layer whenever you allow the sin to kind of take over. And there's so many stories about that you see where the intention was never, this was not part of the plan. Like the brothers did not get together and think this entire thing through. Right. And you can kind of see from some of the messiness of it. I mean, that's what a lot of detectives will look at when they're doing crime scene reports and all that. It's like, this is frantic. Like, this is panic. This is, they fought somebody and then they actually hit him too hard, beat him to death. And then they frantically dug a shallow grave with their hands and then, just tried to run and pretend like nothing had ever happened. And it just doesn't really work out that way. One thing that the Moody commentary pointed out here that I thought was interesting is there's a lot of results of this event by Joseph's brothers, but the three main results that are kind of the redounding results that, have echoes throughout the rest of Genesis is, number one, Joseph will live in slavery, right? So that has a lot of, because when you get into Potiphar and Potiphar's wife and different things, like there's so much that has to do with the fact that he was enslaved at the time. Again, everyone thinks about, African slave trade, chattel slavery. It wasn't exactly like that in that time, but, this is a bad situation for Joseph, surely. So that's number one. Number two, Jacob is going to grieve the loss of his son for over 2 decades. Like, again, you could read this in an hour, but I mean, we're talking about 22 years is him, my son is gone. Like, my favorite son is gone, right? And then the third thing is Joseph's brothers will continue to live in guilt. Because in the moment, you're just trying to think, okay, how could I just get to the next thing? Okay, we just got to do the next thing. Okay, we got to cover this up now. Okay, now let's just kill this goat. Let's dip this thing in this goat. And so and then we'll be fine. And you see that when these people do quote unquote get away with the crime, they're not existing in a prison in terms of, the literal physical location, but they're kind of in a prison of their own mind because they're constantly looking over their shoulder. I mean, you talk to these cold case detectives and, we've talked to different people on the show, that have looked at some of these things. Some of these times when these guys get caught, they are relieved because they've been walking around for decades wondering, is today the day? Right? Guys that get out of the mob or guys that get out of gangs, they're like, is today the day that I get clapped? Is today the day that, I'm going to have to pay for these decisions that I've made? And then they get caught and they get cuffed. And it's just like, oh, thank God it's over.
What's the proverb say? They run when nobody's chasing them. I mean, 'cause
Yeah.
it's all in your head.
Yeah. I mean, that's J. Warner Wallace has told a lot of stories like that.
Yeah.
I thought it was crazy how it just came back around to Jacob again, and that he deceived his father based upon Esau's cloak, and then he was deceived by his own sons with a cloak, And so it's just like, man, it's just crazy how there's so much synergy around the sin in, we look at Abraham and Isaac, and that they lied about their wives, and then Jacob lying to his father and dressing up as his brother using clothes, and now his sons are using Joseph's clothes to deceive him. And so it's just like, man,
Laban does it with his wife.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
does the swap.
I mean, it's just it's just
You think you went to the wrong page? You're like,
Yeah.
oh, I've already read this. Oh, shoot.
no,
This
it
is
happened
still
again.
happening?
Yeah. So I don't know. I just thought it was crazy. But no, I mean, when we look at it, these guys are going to live in guilt for the rest of their lives. I think I talked about, there was a movie, Abraham, that was done by TNT. Richard Harris played Abraham, and we were going over Abraham. They actually did one with Joseph where Ben Kingsley plays Potiphar. And there's a scene where the brothers take the cloak to the father, and they're sitting there lying, and they see their father break down, and the brother who's the most mastermind one of the whole thing, Simeon, which I don't know if biblically that's correct, but Simeon plays the role of the mastermind and the angriest one at Joseph, and he runs out after that scene just sobbing because of the guilt that he had, and not to give away the rest of the story, but in the end of that movie, when Joseph sets them up, he sits there and he goes, "Why do you have so much forgiveness for me?" And it's just another thing to show how we've been so deceitful in our depravity towards God, but he still shows that love for us. And so I hate giving away a lot of the story because there's so much of the story left, but I mean just seeing these guys break down and live in the guilt that they have, and we lived in the guilt of our sin, and because of Christ we don't have to live in that guilt anymore. We're forgiven.
Amen to that. Well, guys, or go ahead, Zach. Well, we covered ground pretty quickly on this one, but we've gone along on a couple of last weeks. But anything else as we wrap up Genesis 37? Again, just getting into the narrative of Joseph. Anyone? All right, guys, we'll just wrap it up there. We appreciate you guys tuning in and listening in. Make sure you are read through Genesis 39 for next week. So read Genesis 38 and 39 to get ready for next week. But before we let you go, we are going to do a quick resilience boost. At Undaunted.Life, our mission is equipping men to push back darkness with content that forges spiritual, mental, and physical resilience. Just a reminder, we have a forging table crossway starter set. Guys, if you are not sitting around with a group of guys digging into the Word of God on a weekly basis, you are missing out. That is part of the reason why we do this, because it keeps all of us, keeps our feet to the fire, keeps us in the Word, keeps us studying. But Crossway has a 5-book forging table starter set for you guys that you can get a tremendous discount. All the details are there in the show notes. Also, we have the Logos Bible software. That is the most powerful Bible software on planet Earth. Don't use it at full price. Use it at a discount. And also, we are a donation-based ministry. If you're wondering how we can pull off all the stuff we do with Undaunted.Life, it's because we have donors just like you that are believers in our mission, that we are here to equip men to push back darkness. We cannot pull that off without you. Undaunted.life/donate. Check the link in the show notes. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Wherever you're listening to this, please subscribe, rate, and leave us a positive 5-star review. If you want me to come speak live at your event or on your podcast, just shoot me an email to info@Undaunted.Life. That's info@Undaunted.Life. Follow us on Instagram and like us on Facebook, and check out our website for everything else, including how to donate to keep more content like this coming your way. Just go to www.Undaunted.Life. And as always, we want to thank the band Holy Name for allowing us to use their music for our content. The music on this podcast is their song Perpetua, which is off their self-titled debut album on Face Down Records. The links are in the description. I'm your host, Kyle Thompson. Remember, keep pushing back darkness, keep forging spiritual, mental, and physical resilience, keep seeking the Lion of Judah.